Only morons just continue separating everybody up into groups and subgroups. I thought we were done with segregation. What kind of indoctrination is this?
So you are claiming right-wing extremism isn't a rising problem?
Only if you watch the news.
So state and federal crime stats are wrong too, huh?
You can't talk sense to people with low IQs. They're willfully ignorant. Facts don't matter to them.
We live in a world filled with misinformation,
LOL, Trump supporters are not Christians. They are an ISIS group.
polarization,
White privileged, ha ha ha. Stop trying to make white people racist.
and hostile conversation.
Stop getting so triggered over a project.
just go away.
Losers. People can't see that racism exists
In this
America.
climate, when confronted with differing opinions, some choose to dismiss them, and some choose to argue. The majority of people are faced with fear of how others will respond, so they just stay silent. Fuse cuts through the noise to break the silence. Fuse is bringing the conversation offline and providing a brave space for people to connect on a human level and break down the tough topics through an informational podcast, a training toolkit, and a conversational card game. Fuse provides the tools to become informed and engaged in preventing radicalization to white supremacist extremism.
I'm Jordan,
I'm Lauren.
I'm Jared.
I'm Natalie.
I'm Sarah.
and we are the Missouri State University ad team and the minds behind Fuse.
Fuse prevents and protects against radicalization to white supremacy through education, bystander empowerment, and community support.
In October 2020, the Department of Homeland Security identified lone offenders and small groups of domestic violent extremists as the greatest threat to our homeland.
This issue could not be more relevant nationally and within our own community.
There are at least 15 active white supremacist groups in Missouri, including chapters of the Proud Boys, neo-Nazis, and racist skinheads. We felt we could make an impact in our community by creating a campaign to prevent and protect against radicalization to white supremacy.
We began our research by identifying characteristics of white supremacist extremists and risk factors to radicalization. We found that the pandemic increased risk factors to violence such as isolation, fear, and internet usage.
Disinformation campaigns motivated an increase in violence against law enforcement and government symbols in 2020.
We identified the following as major factors contributing to radicalization.
The us versus them narrative is used by extremist groups to inspire fear of the other. Belonging to the in group provides a sense of purpose and identity. Personal and political grievances are blamed on the out group.
Extremist groups use social media to push conspiracies and disinformation campaigns. This not only accelerates the radicalization process, but has also contributed to the increased accounts of violence and domestic extremism.
Finally, bystanders don't know what to do when they encounter these issues online and in real life. They are lacking the knowledge and resources needed to identify radicalization and prevent it in their community.
To learn more, we conducted 10 in-depth interviews with experts in the areas of bias and othering, radicalization, and misinformation.
We gained an understanding of how a history of white supremacy in higher education and in our community presently affects minority groups. We were advised on how to advocate for and amplify these groups on campus.
We learned how bystanders can recognize the signs of radicalization and about the processes of de-radicalization and disengagement.
Digital literacy plays an important role in how we process and understand information we see in today's digital spaces. We learned strategies individuals can use to enhance their digital literacy and decipher mis- and disinformation online.
We conducted online surveys of university students to gauge behaviors and beliefs related to radicalization and domestic extremism.
Most students feel that domestic extremism is an important issue, but only 16% are active in prevention efforts.
These research findings helped us narrow down our primary target audience
to the inactive population, university students who are not currently active in prevention efforts.
This group is becoming interested in politics, activism, and broad social issues. They process these issues through meaningful conversation with trusted peers and are looking for tangible ways to get engaged in the cause.
They're comfortable functioning online, but still prefer meaningful engagement with real people and quality connections.
They have a desire to talk about tough issues, but often feel intimidated to do so in person. They use podcasts to learn about new topics and engage in social media activism.
Our secondary target audience is parents, peers, and mentors.
This group works closely with at-risk youth and is often called upon to hold significant conversations without any real training or resources. They are in a position to help at-risk youth find ways to become engaged, but may lack the tools to do so.
They may also be the first to notice the warning signs of radicalization, if properly equipped with the knowledge of the process.
The FUSE strategy was developed to address the key factors contributing to radicalization.
FUSE counters the us versus them narrative used by white supremacist groups by providing tools to engage in meaningful conversation on tough topics and identify personal biases.
FUSE enhances digital literacy to prevent the spread of misinformation through online resources and provides users the knowledge base and critical thinking skills needed to process and understand the information they see online.
FUSE informs and empowers parents, peers, and mentors to identify risk factors and warning signs of radicalization.
To accomplish these objectives, FUSE uses 3 major tactics.
The FUSE podcast educates our primary target audience on key topics related to radicalization.
We produced 6 episodes, each featuring expert guests who shared their knowledge and research and provided action steps for our listeners to engage.
The FUSE podcast has a reach far beyond the Missouri State community. FUSE is starting the conversation with listeners across the world.
The FUSE card game creates a brave space for students to have meaningful conversations. 3 levels gradually lead players to impactful connections.
The game fosters self-reflection through thought-provoking questions about race, religion, class, politics, all the topics we have been told not to talk about.
Level 1 establishes a connection with get-to-know-you questions.
Level 2 encourages players to share times where they have personally experienced othering.
Level 3 allows players to identify and reflect upon their own biases.
By using these cards as kind of like your prompts, I think it's easier than you think to kind of talk to someone, find some common ground, and see what you guys think about each other.
The FUSE Toolkit educates on the process, risk factors, and signs of radicalization, and provides clear connections and access to existing community resources.
5 interactive modules include episodes of the FUSE podcast, carefully curated videos, and related resources from other organizations.
Users can become FUSE certified by completing all 5 modules.
We developed an engagement strategy to encourage participation with FUSE.
We hosted the FUSE event on Missouri State's campus. Participants learned about bias and othering and played the FUSE card game.
I found myself bonding with someone I've never even met.
We constructed a 6-foot-tall house of cards made out of FUSE cards as a guerrilla marketing installation to promote our event and toolkit.
We used Instagram and TikTok to leverage our online presence.
The hashtag #SparkConnection encouraged our followers to continue the conversation beyond social media.
We conducted 3 in-person focus groups to measure effectiveness.
Students liked the design of the FUSE card game and felt that the questions helped them form deep connections in a short amount of time.
In total, the FUSE card game was played by 115 university students. Players felt the questions facilitated meaningful conversations and helped them identify biases.
I didn't realize the biases I really had until opening them up to a stranger.
The FUSE podcast engaged and educated our primary target audience on the topics most important for preventing radicalization.
The toolkit was reviewed and endorsed by university employees, spiritual leaders, and mental health professionals.
As a youth pastor, I find this very helpful. It's great to have resources on how to spot radicalization and step in to give my students proper guidance.
Finally, event participants learned how to recognize their own biases and increase their concerns about misinformation.
Now time for a budget breakdown. We spent a total of $2,000.
A large percentage of this went to hosting and promoting the FUSE event, which allowed us to gain direct feedback from our primary target audience.
28% of the budget went to producing the card game. The durable cards and packaging make it possible for players to replay the game in different settings and with new people.
8.5% of our budget was spent on social media advertisements that raised awareness of our campaign and drove traffic to our social pages, podcast, and toolkit.
6 targeted ad campaigns ran across Facebook, Instagram, and partner sites. We segmented our audience to deliver ads to our target audiences.
FUSE has big plans for the future. With an established digital presence and support of 14 community partners, FUSE is sustainable and prepared to scale. We have already secured funding to produce additional decks of the FUSE card game for university departments and student organizations.
By partnering with organizations from the Missouri State and Greater Springfield community, FUSE enhances community resilience by creating local prevention frameworks and amplifying local efforts.
We've applied to the Innovation Track grant from the Department of Homeland Security. If awarded, we plan to mass produce the Fuse card game, assemble a team to continue the Fuse podcast, and implement the Fuse Toolkit as a training program.
We truly believe in this mission and we want Fuse to be accessible to everyone. So all of our resources are available online for free, including a printable version of the Fuse card game.
Because of this, the Fuse campaign can be easily replicated on any college campus.
But Fuse isn't just for education. Our focus on identifying bias and forming meaningful connections make Fuse a valuable tool for the workplace.
Universities, high schools, mental health centers, and religious organizations can implement the Fuse Toolkit as a training program and encourage their staff to become Fuse certified. In fact, the Fuse Toolkit has been used for staff training by the International Accounting Division at Boeing.
Now, let's recap.
Fuse counters the us versus them narrative by promoting human connection, conversation, and understanding between people who are different from one another, and helping identify and mitigate personal biases.
Fuse prevents the spread of misinformation by strengthening the protective factors of digital literacy and providing strategies to think critically when consuming information online.
Fuse informs and empowers bystanders to help individuals who are at risk or in the process of becoming radicalized.
Throughout this campaign, we created 1 full-length card game, 6 podcast episodes, 5 toolkit modules, 3 promotional videos, 1 campus event, and 3 social media channels.
This is just the beginning. Now, Fuse is expanding beyond the competition to continue to spark connection through conversation.